Chapter 5. A Visit to the Museum of Science. After lunch, Malcolm led the girls to the Museum of Science. As soon as she stepped inside, Aisha's eyes lit up. "What's that?" asked Aisha, pointing to the machine in front of her. The machine, inside a plastic case, had lots of metal parts that were moving some small balls around. "I bet we can find some simple machines in there," Tanya said. "This is like a Rube Goldberg machine," Malcolm explained. "Usually when someone designs a machine, they try to make a complex process simple, using as few steps as possible. The goal of a Rube Goldberg machine is just the opposite. Machines like this are designed to make a simple process complicated, using as many steps as possible. It's more fun this way. Look at how many cool steps it takes to move the little balls around," said Tanya. She watched the ball move from the bottom of the machine to the top by taking a ride on a corkscrew. "I see a lever and wheels and axles too," Aisha said. "We've barely gone inside the museum and we've already found all kinds of simple machines. I bet we can find more," she said, pulling Malcolm's hand. As they walked up to the huge model of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, Tanya pointed out the sharp, pointy wedges he had for teeth. "I wonder if dinosaurs could dance," Aisha giggled. "I think the Tyrannosaurus Rex would dance like this." She puffed out her chest and rocked back and forth with big, lumbering steps as Tanya and Malcolm laughed. They moved on to the baby chick incubator, where several chicks were about to hatch. "So, Aisha, you were inspired by the dinosaurs," said Malcolm. "Do the little chicks give you dance fever too?" "Actually, they're awesome!" exclaimed Aisha. "The chicks hatching would make a great modern dance. First, I would start out like an egg," she said, crouching down into a little ball, "and then I would use my beak like a wedge to help me break out of my shell," she continued. She flapped her arms and ran in a small circle. Tanya and Malcolm laughed at the sight of Aisha making scratching and pecking motions. She did look like a little chick. "Bravo!" exclaimed Malcolm. "Why don't we dance our way over to the exhibit I want to see?" When they entered the Science in the Park exhibit, Aisha and Tanya saw children playing on merry-go-rounds and racing toy cars down inclined planes. Malcolm led them to the seesaw. "Hey," Aisha said, "that seesaw is a simple machine, isn't it?" "You're absolutely right," said Malcolm. "But which simple machine is it? How do you think it works?" "That's easy," said Tanya. "It's a lever, a board, or a bar." "Don't forget the fulcrum," said Aisha, pointing to the support under the bar. "That's what lets the seesaw swing back and forth." She stretched out both arms and swayed like a seesaw. "Hey, Malcolm," said Tanya, "I bet Aisha and I can lift you up on the seesaw." "All right, let's see what you can do," Malcolm said. He climbed onto one end of the seesaw, and both girls climbed on the other. Malcolm's end of the board rose and carried him up. "That was too easy," Malcolm said. "I've got another puzzle for you. Can just one of you lift me up?" Everyone got off the seesaw. Aisha and Tanya looked at Malcolm, then the seesaw, then each other. Said Tanya. "I bet I can do it." She climbed on the seesaw, close to the pivot point. "Now you get on," she told Malcolm. He sat on the other end. His weight pushed Tanya way up in the air. "Whoa," Tanya said. "I guess I was wrong about what would happen when I moved towards the fulcrum." "There's an important clue in that mistake," said Malcolm. "Now that you've seen what happens, do you have any new ideas?" "I do," exclaimed Aisha. "If Malcolm moves to the middle and Tanya moves to the end, I bet it will help I bet it will be a lot easier to lift him. Sure enough, Tanya's weight raised Malcolm high in the air. You got it, see? Changing the distance between the fulcrum and the weight changes the force you need to lift it. Okay, you can let me down now, Malcolm said. But Tanya only giggled and stayed in place. Come on, Tanya. Nope, she teased. Well, if you don't let me down, then we can't leave. And if we don't leave, then I can't take you to the potato chip factory, cried Aisha. Tanya quickly slid off the seesaw, and the three of them made their way back home. Chapter 6. Fun at the Factory. The next day, Aisha and Tanya skipped into the potato chip factory ahead of Malcolm. His boss, Miss Johnson, was there to meet them. Hello, girls, Miss Johnson said. We're excited to have you here. Malcolm told me you know a lot about simple machines we use in our factory subsystems. We found simple machines everywhere we went yesterday, said Aisha. I really want to see how they work here in the factory. I know it will help us with our summer project for school. Miss Johnson and Malcolm led the girls to a big truck. This is the beginning of the whole process, she said. There are about 50,000 pounds of potatoes in there. 50,000 pounds, cried Tanya. That's a lot of chips. The girls watched a worker drive a tractor up to the back of the truck, pick up a load of potatoes, and dump them on a conveyor belt. The conveyor belt didn't look like the ones at the supermarket checkout. There are lots of little bumps on it that bounce the potatoes around. Look, Aisha said. The conveyor belt uses wheels and axles to bounce all the dirt off the potatoes. That's right. Next, we clean the potatoes even more, Miss Johnson explained. The potatoes go into a big vat of water where we wash them. On the other side of the vat, a big screw called an auger pulls the potatoes out again. At the Museum of Science, we saw a screw lifting things too, said Tanya. The group walked on. I see another simple machine, cried Aisha. She pointed toward the machine that peeled the potatoes. All the potatoes slide down an inclined plane. So the potatoes all come down gently, said Tanya. That's right, said Miss Johnson. We don't want mashed potatoes. We do want them sliced, though. She pointed to a round machine. The potatoes are spun against really sharp blades. And blades are wedges, Aisha interrupted. Right, after the potatoes are sliced, they fall onto a conveyor belt. Then they're ready to be cooked in hot oil, said Miss Johnson. The girls watched the potato slices fall into a huge kettle of oil. Malcolm pointed toward metal rods that were stirring the kettle. That mixing machine stirs the slices so a person doesn't have to stand over hot oil doing that job. I bet an industrial engineer figured that out, making work easier, Aisha said. After the potatoes cook for about 5 minutes, we add seasonings, said Malcolm. Like vinegar and herbs and barbecue and pepper? Said Aisha. Not all at once, please, Malcolm joked. Then the chips are packaged and sent all over the country, said Miss Johnson. But we keep some bags for ourselves. How would you like some fresh potato chips? You don't need to ask me twice, said Aisha. Lead the way. Chapter 7. A Potato Chip Treat. At home that afternoon, Tanya and Aisha talked about how to present their project in class. We could write about it, said Tanya, but I'd rather just take everybody in our class to the factory. What if we bring the factory to the class? Aisha asked. We could design our own subsystem, just like they have at the factory, and show it to our class. That's a great idea, said Tanya. We can pretend a truck drops off potatoes on the floor, If you have to keep reaching down to the floor so you can cook them, that will hurt your back. We can design a simple machine subsystems to lift the potatoes up. Let's get Malcolm to help us, said Aisha. The girls ran to find Malcolm and tell him their idea. Malcolm helped the girls gather wooden dowels, tubes, and long sheets of cardboard. Okay, now what? Tanya asked. But Aisha had already started pulling materials out of a box and putting things together. Just dive in and start building stuff, she cried. Malcolm interrupted. Aisha, that's one way to get things done, but engineers usually make a plan first. It can be really helpful. But how am I supposed to know what to plan? Asked Aisha. I figure things out as I go along. Well, sometimes engineers do that, explained Malcolm, but we have steps to help us too, to be sure we know what materials we'll need and how they'll fit together. It's all part of the engineering design process. What's that? Asked Tanya. It's a way of doing things, step by step, said Malcolm. You've already started asking some good questions to get yourself started. Next, you need to imagine some solutions and then plan it out. You may even want to draw out your plan. Aisha frowned. I can definitely imagine lots of things, but planning is no fun. Come on, Aisha, Tanya said. We'll do it together. Aisha and Tanya sat down on the floor and began sketching. They questioned, compromised, and built on one another's ideas until they had a plan they thought would work. I think we're ready to go, Tanya told Malcolm. Let's take a look at your plan, Malcolm said. The girls explained their drawing to Malcolm. Looks like you're ready for the next step, creating your subsystem. All three of them began working to bring the plan to life, testing each part along the way. I think we're done, said Tanya, as she taped a pulley to the edge of the counter. How will this work? Asked Malcolm. I was thinking it would work kind of like the seesaw we used in the museum, said Tanya. The potatoes will go on one end, and some weight at the other end will push the seesaw down. Then the potatoes will roll down the ramp onto the counter. Malcolm said. Let's give it a try. Aisha pushed down on one end of the seesaw. The three of them watched as the roly-poly potatoes teetered off the side of the ramp. Oh no, Aisha cried. Since there aren't any sides on this inclined plane, the potatoes fell off. That's no good. Malcolm looked at the girls. It looks like it's time for the last step of the engineering design process. Improve. Do you think another simple machine might do the job better? Well, said Tanya, we could use an inclined plane like the one we saw at the factory. Maybe that would be better. And we could even make a cart with wheels and axles to carry the potatoes up the inclined plane, Aisha added. The girls and Malcolm worked on their inclined plane and cart until they were satisfied with the whole system. Well, look at that, said Malcolm. Malcolm, you girls really are engineers. I can't wait to show everyone at school all the stuff we've learned this summer, said Aisha. The girls began to giggle as they danced their way over to Malcolm to give him a big hug. The end.